Hello all, welcome back to another episode of Language Teacher Reacts. I'm going to be reacting to more foreigners speaking Taiwanese Mandarin. Let's see how it goes. I'll be offering my comments and advice as always. So let's get started with our first person. It looks like we are in a night market. Let's see if we can figure out which one it is. It might be Shilian.
你一开始为什么想学中文？
为什么？为什么开始？第一个原因就是因为我很喜欢旅行，然后我半年以前有一个机会来台湾读书，读1年，所以我就OK， 好吧，我来台湾，这是我在台湾开始学习中文。
你是怎么学中文的？
在台湾我有一个中文老师，所以我每天有1个小时的课。所以我每天可以慢慢进步。
So first let's talk about why she's learning Mandarin. So I think any reason is valid, but she's liking travel, she likes traveling in this area, and then she had an opportunity and she just took it. That's a totally valid reason. I think it's a great reason. If you have an opportunity like that, where you can go to the country where they speak the language you're learning, that's an excellent way to make some really good rapid progress. As to how she's learning it, an hour a day with a teacher is going to make you improve very quickly, especially if the teacher knows what they're doing. Regular practice like that is definitely going to be able to keep pushing her language levels, and I think it's going to be very important, especially while being in a majority Chinese speaking environment like in Taiwan. And so yeah, she's definitely going to be making lots of good progress. Let's keep listening.
然后我也有很多台湾的朋友，所以我可以跟他们聊天，进步我的中文，这样子。
So we ran into this last episode where people were saying 进步我的中文. So you can't actually say that in Mandarin, as I mentioned before. You have to say 让我的中文进步. For example, like 跟台湾朋友聊天可以让我的中文进步. Speaking with Taiwanese friends can help me improve my Mandarin, but we don't express it that way because it's not a 及物动词. You cannot have an object after it. I'm curious how long she's been learning Mandarin. I don't know if she's mentioned that, but we will see.
你听起来中文还不错，所以你觉得你现在中文的水平到哪里？
I think that she's probably intermediate. It sounds like she's got a lot of support in terms of she's talking with Taiwanese friends, she's talking with teachers. And so just building up time, interacting with the tones, and maybe getting some feedback on the tones, I think will be very helpful. But she's quite comprehensible, I would say, still. And that's something that you should never be afraid of. I know a lot of foreigners will feel afraid, like, oh, I don't have good tones, no one's going to understand me. But for the most part, unless your tones are truly atrocious, you're probably going to be able to be understood by everyone, 99% of the time. There are a couple of places where your tones are going to get you in a little bit of trouble. For example, mai versus mai, nar versus nar. Or if you're in Taiwan, 哪里 versus 哪里. But other than that, there aren't a whole lot of situations where people will not be able to figure out generally what you mean, even if your tones are not the best.
没有那么好。以前好像那个新冠病毒以前我的中文我觉得不错，但是现在呢？ 因为有那个网络课，然后不能旅行，我的中文就变得不好，我觉得。
Yeah, so that's something that will influence your language abilities. If you don't spend a lot of time with the language anymore, or if the time you're spending with the language isn't of a high quality, like if you're doing online lessons only and you have no other exposure to the language, it's possible that you're going to forget some. But the good news is, if you've learned it before, you can relearn it much faster the second time. And it seems like she's now in Taiwan, so she's definitely able to travel now. So she definitely has a lot of hope for getting even better at Mandarin.
对，所以这是为什么我回来台湾。 因为我很想进步我的中文。
我听得很不错，所以你不用太担心，我觉得蛮好的，我觉得蛮好。
I would agree. All right. Yeah, so for her, I think that she's quite good. I could understand everything she was saying. It was quite comprehensible. It seems like she's on the right track to do even better, and it seems like she has a really good system in place with friends and daily classes. So I think that she has nothing to worry about. Her Mandarin's going to get back to that level it was before COVID really quickly and get even further beyond that. All right, let's listen to our next person's Mandarin.
有点难说，因为我10年前开始自学，可是我这个时候觉得算是爱好，还算是爱好，所以我不是直接的上课，就是。
Okay, interesting. So he's mostly learned by himself. I would say 10 years of learning by himself as kind of like a hobby. I'm not sure how much time he spent on it or how he was learning, but he's completely comprehensible, and it seems like he understood the question, even though we didn't get to hear the question. It seems like he's in a good spot in terms of his language ability. Let's hear more about why he's in Taiwan, how he learned Mandarin, all of this fun stuff.
是2018年开始上课，在台大上那个 MTC 的课，不好意思 CLD 的课。这里是 MTC 的，
So actually he has had classes. Funny enough, I also did the 台大语言中心 instead of the 师大国语中心. Those are probably the big two. I know there are a lot of programs like that for learning Mandarin in Taiwan, but I think those two are probably the big ones. I personally preferred the 语言中心 at 台大 because we had smaller class sizes. I only had 4 other people in my class, whereas I know it tended to be 8 to 10 at the 国语中心. They do have a lot more activities though at 国语中心, so it's a bit of a toss-up which you prefer. And so maybe you might prefer to have more people in your class because you might want to meet more people. Another thing I want to comment on is his tones are quite good. He's throwing in some English as well, but like you hear like 上课. 4th tone I think is a little bit difficult sometimes for Mandarin learners, but his 上课 was quite good. Let's keep listening.
然后我开始有一个 tutor， 现在我又在上课。Yeah， 其实他是一个 ICLP 是一个台大的系。中文系，
一个中文系，
对的老师，
对。
可是那个时候他住在波兰，所以都是晚上的。是疫情的时候，其实我非常满意，我中文改善了很多。
I don't think we would use 改善 like this. We would say 我的中文进步了很多。改善 sounds like I'm not sure why, but 改善 sounds like the wrong word to use here. I will do some research and put up why that is.
现在我觉得还有很多进步的空间，所以我来。
Don't we all? We all have 很多进步的空间. But that's why we learn the language, because we want to get better and better and better, and it never ends. Even now, as a Mandarin teacher, I definitely run into things that I haven't learned before. I'm still always improving. You can definitely always make progress.
在这里，我拿到奖学金来到这里学6个月的中文。
所以你这一次会在台湾待6个月，然后会在全中文的环境生活。
对.
Okay, that was a bit of a shorter interview, so we're going to do one last one, and then we're going to move along. But for him, it sounds like he just arrived and he's just starting. So that's pretty impressive, assuming that all of his Mandarin was learned overseas before. His comprehension seems quite good. He's throwing in a lot of English words, but that's not necessarily entirely non-native. A lot of people in China and Taiwan will throw in English words, sometimes just to seem fancy, but I think that's something that you'll see quite often. All right, let's move on to our last person. So let's see what the situation is.
Before we start, can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Hey, I'm Mahela. I'm 21 and I'm from Berlin. Yeah.
Is anyone influenced you to visit Taiwan?
So back home in Berlin, my major is Chinese. I major in Mandarin Chinese, but I learned simplified characters. But I wanted to go to a Chinese-speaking country just to practice, because I've just been to other Asian countries. And because I talked to some friends and they told me Taiwan was their absolutely favorite place ever, because I have friends that did semesters, university semesters in different countries.
Okay, so I guess I'll talk a little bit about their English. So you'll notice that their English is both quite good, which is something you usually expect out of Northern European countries. So for her, it seems more of a cultural thing. Her major in Berlin was Chinese. So I'm not sure about the quality of her studies there necessarily, or if she just felt more comfortable speaking in English for this. I also don't know if she's finished her studies. She might be a second year's student. So we'll see a little bit more. I hope that she speaks some Mandarin, so we can talk about that.
Maybe we can practice your Mandarin.
Oh.
All right, now we're getting into the Mandarin. Let's go.
你中文学习多久？
1年。
才1年。
才1年。
那你当
Okay, yeah. So as I thought, she hasn't really learned that much yet because she's only learned in 1 year, and she was also in Berlin. But her tones on 1年 were pretty good, so it was definitely easy to understand. And she also completely understood the question, which is a level that you would expect someone to know after a year of studying. Just how long have you been learning Mandarin? But let's keep listening.
当时候为什么想学中文？
我就觉得中文是一个很有意思的语言，所以我觉得如果你能说中文，你可以说跟很多人，还有
更多机会。
Yeah, so that's definitely a little bit of a native language. We call that 复前移. I don't know what it's called in English, but 复前移 is when you take a word, a grammatical concept, something like that from your native language or another language, and transpose it on a new language that you're speaking. So here she was saying 可以说跟很多人, but in Mandarin you always have anything modifying the verb like that, like time, talking to people, that kind of stuff always comes after the subject. 我可以跟很多人说话, for example. Because even adding the 话 at the end sounds better in Mandarin. Because if you just say 说, 我可以跟很多人说, it feels unfinished. But she seems quite confident in her delivery at least, and it is still comprehensible what she means.
机会，对啊。
你怎么学习中文的？
上课的时候，还有我的德国朋友，
对，
yeah，还有 在家一个人。
Okay, so she seems to have a bit of a support system there as well. So she's not the only one learning. She's learning with her German friends back in Germany. And of course, she has classes, which is big. And now that she's in Taiwan, I'm sure she's going to make so much progress just getting so much exposure to the language in this way. All right, I think that's the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for having me. God, sorry.
No, it's my pleasure. No.
No. She was good. She was good. Just needs a little bit more time with the language, and she's going to have very good language skills. That's what it's all about when you're learning language, just exposure over time. All right, and that wraps up this episode of A Language Teacher Reacts. I hope you've enjoyed. If you speak Mandarin or are learning Mandarin, why don't you sound off? Let me know how you think their Mandarin was. I think it was pretty decent, but you might have a different opinion. And feel free to leave any resources that you use to learn Mandarin. I'd love to hear about them. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them in the comments below. Catch you next time. 再见，拜拜。